Welcome back, guys, into the F1 Fantasy Cockpit. This is your captain speaking, and at the time of recording, it is T-minus 2 hours to the start of the sprint race. And then after the sprint, we will have quali for the race. So right away, just quickly, we're just going to be going through teams today. There's quite a few combinations for teams that people will be using. I know a lot of people have something similar to this. So this was my team from last week. So fairly fortunate for this team. Like Williams won't take much to get more into the positives again. Piastri shouldn't take much as long as he doesn't spin out and end up in 10th. Sainz has to go out. So what I've been telling everyone else to do is anywhere you see a Sainz, we're throwing an Albon in there. And I only have 0.2 more to work with. It's kind of honest work. There's not much that can be done for this week. If I want to get a little spice here, things that can be done, I really think Williams is going to score good points this week. I know a lot of people will be tempted to do something along the lines of this. And then knowing that we have extra money here instead of Bortoleto, that's where if people don't have Stroll already in there, they can make the switch. If you don't have Hulkenberg in there, make the switch. Pardon me, I'm going to sort this by value. So this is where we could be taking maybe a Yuki Tsunoda, just because starting at 0 points is much better than the guys that are these -20s that are guaranteed to go down this week. Even an Ollie Behrman, where is Esteban Ocon? Or even Ocon starting at 8 points wouldn't be the worst. I do have a lot more budget available. I'm a little hesitant to be adding the Haas drivers. I'm more adding them in there as they're the budget place fillers for a lot of these teams where you have to be taking lower cost drivers of the 7 mil and less to fill out the roster. That's where Ocon, Hulk are really, really nice because they're not going to be giving you negatives right away. I just don't expect Haas to be very competitive this week. They were so fortunate last week to score as many points as they did. I think the constructor is going to be pretty well guaranteed to go up in budget, even if they don't give you much points this week. I just really worry about the Haas drivers themselves. So this is an idea of what people can run. So knowing there, that's 3 changes there. So without using a wild card, that's only -10 points. It's not my favorite. I really think I would rather stick with keeping the Williams, knowing they scored 10 points, so they were just under even money for points per million. So it's not really going to take much for them to score. We expect Sainz to do better things, especially if he is starting back at the sprint. He's an aggressive guy. He can overtake some drivers quite easily. So the only guy that's really hurting my team here is Bortoleto. And my only decision really now with the 0.2 is I can either have Isaac Hadjar or I have Bortoleto. Isaac Hadjar just seems to be less comfortable in his car than Bortoleto is. Bortoleto, as much as he is having spins, I think Hadjar is just losing traction on certain corners. And he's starting with 2 less points and 0.2 more. And if it's going to come down to that 0.1 points per million, every little point matters. And if it's going to be that close, I want the guy with the smaller margin with 2 points and less than 2 mil. If these guys score equal, Bortoleto's more likely to maybe escape that negative 0.6 again versus what Hadjar is. So just having a quick look at what some other people have done here. So for now, this is likely all the changes I'm going to make to this team. Short of a wild card, if people are in fact doing that, I think these 3 are still ones that people are going to be wanting to use. Kimi Antonelli is almost guaranteed. I think actually, I say almost. I think he is actually guaranteed to be going up in points this week. Let me see. So we'll get him added in there. And then we have 9.3 still to use. So maybe that's where we're plugging in Yuki Tsunoda. If we can expect good things, just overall using as much of that budget as I can. maybe if we're getting crazy with the wild card too, maybe I do throw Haas in there, knowing that at this rate I'm going strictly budget. But you know what? If I'm going strictly budget, maybe I do want the Williams in there. So if you're using a wild card and you want to keep Williams, McLaren as your constructors, just because then moving forward, if you want to be able to flip off of Sonoda and Antonelli, for example, so let's say next week, Antonelli is going to be really close to breaking that 20. Yuki, maybe is something happens in this positive race. If you're wanting to switch out of those two guys, at only 28 mil, there's really not too much more you can do. You can still get, you can go back to a Piastri and a Bortoleto, as Bortoleto is only going to get cheaper. So that'd be a nice two free transfer ways to get back to this kind of team if you're wanting Piastri to be that. But for this week, if we want, we can just not run them that way. Stick with Yuki, stick with Antonelli, and that's an idea. If you want something more consistent up near the top, we could probably even go George Russell in there and maybe grab, oh, that's really not too much more. Maybe that gets you a Doohan, but he's also in that minus 20. Maybe you go Behrman just for the same reason I says the Haas car starting at 2 points and only 6 mil. He's got that easier time to maybe avoid a negative 0.6, and he only gives you a negative 0.2. So for those using the wild card, personally, I think the Antonelli one could be a little nicer. Maybe he doesn't qualify as nice again. Maybe makes a mistake. I don't think he's going to do that, but who knows? The pressures of the race qualifying could be a little different. And then here, I'm going to run my Yuki. So maybe running a wild card. This is maybe what your teams look like. Now, for a lot of people, I know that have the Mercedes Ferrari team. This is one of my teams. It did fairly well, I think, last week. It wasn't great, but it was not horrible either. Pretty fortunate. This is actually a team that Piastri is pretty close to positive, so I know he's not going to go negative this week. Behrman's pretty close, so knowing that I have at least 5 guys going up, this could be a limitless team. And if you are like borderline, very borderline a limitless team, I'm not getting much budget, but also knowing that I have these 3 drivers, even Hulk, like I might be a little thin, although this week, Ferrari looking as good as they did in the sprint race, this might be a good week to keep them, knowing the constructors are definitely going to be carrying me, and I just need Piastri to be maybe in the sprint race be the better McLaren, and then continue that on hopefully into the race. Maybe it gets in Lando's head a little bit tonight, as it's going to be right afterwards. There isn't much time to really reset for these guys, but they're professionals, so anything can happen. But for me, I only got 0.8 to use. So even if it's Behrman moving out, for me, now my budget might be a little bit more than all of yours right now, as I am at 99.8 million. So obviously we have to adjust, but realistically, when you guys are building your teams, if you are burning a wild card, the guys that you have to avoid are all these negative scores. The Doohans, the Alonsos, the Hadjars, the Sainz, Bortoleto if you can, Liam Lawson, Yuki's fine. All these others are fine. Like even though they're like Oscar's going negative, I don't expect that to continue. Lewis Hamilton, don't expect that to continue it, especially at these 0.3s. That's like just barely missing the positive mark of +3 even. So the best you can do to avoid all these big negative scores, the better. If you have to carry one, so what? You have to carry one. Say, Livy, it's as long as you're not carrying multiples, because it's going to be a huge hit, like 0.6, even times 3, that's your 1.8. That's what you lost last week, essentially. So that's what you want to avoid as best you can. So this is a team that, yeah, I very well could go the limitless strategy with, just because these 2 guys might be the only ones that go negative for me this week, but I have the other 5 to carry. So knowing that, like I was saying earlier, I don't expect the Haas drivers to get many points this weekend. Maybe to get out of that and using them strictly for budget, milk them for budget, and then run a limitless this week, if you can, to get as many points as possible. So that way next week I can hopefully flip these guys out, maybe on a wild card, once we know that maybe some of these bigger guys coming off these negatives, maybe I want more of these guys coming off those negative points in their scores that are going to help the averages out, like they could be in line for big gains again. So we may want to be using even the wild card upcoming right away to get some of these guys back in, even after they get cheaper. So there's definitely two ways to use the wild card. You can use it to react to drivers continuing to go down, or you can use it if you're able by only making two transfers to get some of these guys back in your lineups. It might have to be a slow process. Having two races under the belt to know who's actually going to be training the right way might fare better, but I know a lot of people, this could be what most people have if they're able to go get a wildcard team. Now, some other options for what teams could look like, especially for people maybe burning a wildcard that want to run these two constructors, might be a little bit thinner for what you have to run. So here, we'll run this first. So first we'll run it with the cheapest of the consistents. So that's going to be Kimi Antonelli there. And now we're going to go to the bottom, grab what positives we can. Nico Hülkenberg, Esteban Ocon, Lance Stroll, and that leaves us with 7.3. Bother. Yeah, so we're doing okay. We're all positives here. Maybe this is where, maybe we have to take an Ollie Behrman. And for me, knowing I still have a bit of budget at 1.2, this again may not be achievable for a lot of people because I started at 99.8. For the people, like I only lost 0.2. For the people that lost 1.8, you have 1.6, so you couldn't do this. So Behrman would be out for you, and you'd have to add someone down here at the bottom, which would likely be a Bortoleto for you. And again, it could be worse. He gives you the best chance to possibly not get a second 0.6 this week. And I think that's what we really have to at least start striving for, is just trying not to get 0.6s again. If you take a point minus 0.2, so what? There's like, who else is going to give you anything different? Like Doohan's going to be taking a -6 again. Hajjar's taking a -6 again. Sainz, there's Alonso. These are guys you cannot have. And for anyone that didn't watch my previous episodes, for teammates, if you have room to be able to switch teammates from Bortoleto to Hülkenberg, do it. If you have the money to go Alonso to Stroll, do it. Same with Sainz to Albon. These are guys that are close in value. This one's only 0.1, so unless you were absolutely perfect with your spending last week, this is at least a move you should be able to make. And like they're almost like flipped in points for the same value. Like that's why one's going up 0.6, one's going down 0.6. That's at least one of the changes you have to be making. You cannot be holding on to Sainz out of, like, you have to put emotions aside. I want Sainz to succeed. I want him to be the better driver there, but you just cannot own him this week unless you already have Albon in there, in which case, best of luck to you. We'll get to what some of these other teams can look like. But this might be what you have to run. I think this gives you the most positives here, as well as the ability for a few of these guys to score points and maybe get some overtakes, and your constructors are going to be helping you a great deal as well. For people wanting to be maybe a little bit more aggressive, so let's take Ocon out of there as well. Let's try to get maybe an Oscar Piastri, and now we're up to 5.7 for me. So we have no choice but to take a Hajjar, and that's just assuming that we think Piastri has a better chance of finishing on the podium than Antonelli does. He's just likely going to go up in value this week, so instead of getting, it's going to be a 0.3 million difference between Antonelli and Piastri, and so you just have to weigh the difference of 0.3. So if Antonelli goes up 0.6 and Piastri goes up 0.3, or I guess he wouldn't go up a 0.3, he'd only go up a 0.2 because he's in that algorithm group for plus 20. It's still only 0.4. It's less than 500,000, and what could be double the amount of points for the weekend. And so that's something we have to look at if that's something we really want. Because, like, look at Max Verstappen, we finished second last week at 29 points, and then we're looking at George Russell at 25. Until he got 32 because of so many overtakes last week, and so not starting from 16th, maybe he gets some of those points for where he starts in qualifying, but he's not outscoring his teammate unless he's starting far worse. So Piastri, skipping Antonelli for Piastri is definitely a strategy because it's only a small budget you're giving up, but it could be potentially way more points, especially with Norris having to get past a lot of the field or halfway up to first place than Piastri is. Piastri could very well win the sprint. And so we'll see what happens with that. But this is all, it all, again, I'm only left with a point 0.1 million now on this team. This may not be feasible for a lot of people. The options might only be George Russell or only Kimi Antonelli just because of how bad teams were. So this is an idea of what could work. A really good tool for a lot of people because values are already so hard. This F1fantasytools.com, these guys do an awesome job. So you have the ability to type in what your max budget is. So for me, for example, 99.8. And so this is going to tell me the best I can do. Oh, that scares the heck out of me. Yeah, so a team that has Lawson on there, I already hate it. But this is a team that allegedly is supposed to score me the most points. And they also have expected price changes. So these guys have logged the algorithm in there. And so this is now, again, these guys are running simulations for this. They're making predictions on this. It's a very, very good educated guess. It's not going to be perfect. So don't go harassing these guys because their number one team didn't put up exactly 224 points. The same thing can be said if you were to sort by expected price change. When you build a team like this, it's only that, oh, my team didn't go up even 2 million when I set up your team. Don't go harassing these guys. These guys do good work to provide stats that real people can use for us. Oh, I see what I've done here. I'm just going to refresh this because I excluded some drivers. So I excluded the Haas drivers on here just because I really didn't want to use them. But actually, it's not too big of a difference for taking out the Haas drivers versus otherwise. So I think this gives you the top 100 teams per your simulation. So by including the Haas drivers and things, they're expecting you to be able to gain upwards of 3 million on the week, which would be absolutely huge. But look at your points. It's really, really suffering. So you have to take this all with a grain of salt, seeing as how they predict for someone to be able to gain 3 million, your best might be 171 points, whereas someone going just for points is 229. So that's a 50-point difference. That may not be much to some people. That might be everything to some people. But to go after the one with the most at 105, that's just a huge deficit, and you can't be doing that. But this is a good way to evaluate your team. Now, this isn't the end-all, be-all. This isn't for sure. This isn't what's going to happen exactly. But this is your best tool for being able to figure out like what to do with your teams. So I think a lot of people are here at 98.2, having lost 1 point. You know what? We'll just do 98 even. 98 even. Let's see what a lot of people could be working with. So a lot of people. Oh, this is actually one of the first V-carb options I've seen. So this actually does have you going up a small amount in price and giving you a lot of points. This may not be enough for what you want to happen, but for a McLaren V-carb, so maybe this is for someone that has that Williams build that we were talking about earlier. So you just switch your Williams to a V-carb. You likely already have Piastri in the lineup. And then the likelihood, I don't even think my teams had both Haas's. Did I have both Haas's? No, it was this group that had both Haas's. So a lot of people will have to use wild cards to be able to follow these. But right off the bat, for people with 98 million, this isn't a bad little group here that I like, being able to score 221 points and allegedly going up in 2.5 points of value. That might be something that a lot of people should work towards with a McLaren Haas team, which I think Haas, because they scored so many points last week, I don't think it's possible for them to go down in price this week, even if like short of like disaster happening, as long as both drivers finish, knock on wood. I think they're going to be going up in value again. Piastri, a lot of people stacked McLaren and Piastri, so it's doable. And then we have Gasly, Albon. A lot of people, like myself, have Albon with Piastri somewhere, and then both Haas drivers. I'm not a huge fan of having the Haas drivers. Maybe you try to move off them next week, run Haas for, or even depending how they do. Maybe we're dumping Behrman for Bortoleto next week, dumping Haas to be able to get maybe back up to a Williams or something. It's all going to depend how the race weekend goes. But I'm already, as you can tell, in my thought process, I'm already looking for, if I'm wildcarding into this team, how am I getting out of it to a team that is not just building a budget maybe for scoring points, but this is a pretty respectable group of points here, which could be very, very, very exciting. So yeah, we're just going to continue on here. 218. This one has actually both Aston Martin drivers, shockingly, and going up in value. But oh, it's also got Norris in there, who should have very good races, as well as Aston Martin and McLaren. So really leaning into Aston Martin and McLaren. I've seen a lot of Aston Martin builds for people trying this week as an alternative to Haas or Williams. Yeah, this is a great tool, guys. Like even this one going up 1.8 million, I like this team's actually not bad. I don't love Alpine as a constructor, especially since they're the first ones to admit that they had to do the rear wing change. So the worst that could happen is cars being disqualified for the rear wing being affected during the race. Not to say it will, but something to think about. Still giving you over 200 points. Albon, Ocon, Tsunoda, Hulkenberg, I like. Piastri being the 2X, I like. So in all, this, again, not a bad team here. And it's all about just experimenting, folks. So for myself, even having looked at my main team, there's certain drivers maybe you don't want. So for me, if I want to try to avoid the Haas drivers but leave the constructor in there, these are the teams that now I'm looking at. So for teams trying to get budget and points, this might be the route I'm going here. So they have McLaren and Williams, which I have, and then it has Piastri and Albon, which I could have here. Let's just do it as we go, because I think this is along the lines of what I wanted anyway with this team. And then it's going Stroll, Hulkenberg, and Hadjar. So Stroll, Hulkenberg, and instead of Bortoleto in here, they have Isaac Hadjar. So I'm pretty close with that team. I think I still would rather have Bortoleto. Do they actually have this exact same one, I wonder? Albon, Stroll, Hulk. Albon, Stroll, Hulk. Just trying to see right away if they have the difference of where they have Bortoleto versus Hadjar. Albon, Stroll, nope. Albon, Stroll, nope. Yeah, it's an interesting one, but I definitely recommend using this website. These guys do absolutely awesome work. They have a premium service that they can provide as well to be able to get some extra tools on here as well. You can load your teams in here, select a chip to get a much more personalized feel for what it's going to look like. These guys have existed for a few years now. They've been excellent. Here you go. They have a new brand. I haven't even seen this yet. It's a brand new point score the last 2 races. So it looks like, so it's running the algorithm for us. So that's pretty cool. So it shows you tier A, tier B. Cool. We'll get into this a little bit later, but strictly for building your budget, great tool under the team calculator to quickly maybe shore up if you're trying to decide between 2 teams. Plug them in here. You can go to include and exclude in this window here. So exclude, even if you have your team and there's maybe like 3 different drivers, include them just to show what they look like. So if you want a combination of the McLaren drivers, check both of them off. If there's one I want Antonelli in there, put him in there. I want to see some with Albon. I want to see some with Stroll. I want to see some with Hulk, Hadjar, Bortoleto. Is it going to be able to do it for me? Let's see. Maybe not. I might have broken it. I might have done too much. I asked too much. Oh boy. Well, I'm just going to reset it here. But either way, this is ways that really good tools to build teams for. So I think this is probably going to be close. I think this is where a lot of teams are going to get back together this week from a lot of people wildcarding. I think there was a lot of variance at the start of the year, and I think we're all going to come back now. I think a lot of people are going to be running likely this combination, which, you know what, I'm pretty happy with this. Yeah, I'm going to run this team. So this is my main team that I run. I only used one transfer. Did I do something wrong? Did I not throw someone else in there? I didn't. Oh, okay. So the benefit to this, for something that I'm likely about to do, I only used one transfer. So next week, depending on what can happen, I will have three free transfers to use. Just because I've been fortunate enough to only need to make really one change. I could change them for this week. I just think I do expect them to maybe go up point 0.2, even if Haas only goes up point 0.2, like that point 0.4 million for what I expect Williams to score, like triple the points Haas will maybe. Because I don't expect Haas to have the same weekend they had last weekend. I think that's just going to be a better trade off for a few million. Keep talking myself into it. Regardless, I have one to use still. I'm going to go ahead and run this through. So all I'm changing is signs to Albon. And that is my team. This is my main team that I care about for my global ranking. These are a couple others. So just having some fun with this one. Let's try to fix a McLaren and Mercedes team. I don't think there's much to do here. So do I activate a Limitless one here? So the reason for the Limitless is nice for a lot of people that are even new is for a sprint race. It's one extra event to get, I think it's anywhere from like 10 to 15 points after they count fastest lap and things like that if they're still counting it. So it is a little bit extra points, which is nice because especially for your 2x drivers where it's going to matter the most, just because the points gained in the sprint race for your 2x driver, it could count as much as any of the points do for your lesser drivers. So like basically the extra points Piastri could get this weekend just for the sprint might be more than what Behrman or Ocon or Bortoleto score independently. So it's basically like you're having like a sixth low cost driver on your team for a week. On top of everybody else has the extra sprint race too, and the constructors to gain more points as well. So it's a nice way to use the limitless because even if maybe you miss on one of your drivers in the limitless, you're getting extra points all the way around. And then the other one like people like to use on sprint weekends is the 3x, but we haven't seen enough. I think like some people are crazy and like to use it week one, which is sometimes kind of nice, but also like last year we saw a lot of people use on Max Verstappen week one, and I don't even think he finished that race, I believe, in week one. So it burned them. So I like to wait. I want to see who's being consistent, which cars are making a difference. Now, this weekend, we saw the Ferraris, the McLarens, and the Red Bull finish top five for sprint qualifying, with the Mercedes right there, and then Lando Norris, of all people, being the bottom. The reason why, I think if it was anyone else, I think if it was Piastri, I would be hesitant. If he switched with Norris, I'd be hesitant to use the limitless on the full McLaren team just because Piastri has to then work up a whole other through another team to get through with Mercedes right there. But the fact that it's Lando, I feel a little bit better knowing he has to do the most work for my limitless team. If you were to triple up on the McLarens, triple up on the Ferraris, and then run Max Verstappen or maybe one of the Mercedes in the back. And the only reason you do that is because enough of your team is going to be going up in points. I consider Piastri going up in points. Hulk is, Ferrari, Mercedes will, Ocon is. So there's 5 of my 7. And these guys, Behrman has a chance to at least go even. Bordello will, but to sacrifice maybe what little budget I'm not going to go down aggressively in budget. Is the only reason I can consider using the limitless this week. I would rather have my team in a much better situation and have like a fluke on for one of my drivers maybe in a future race, in future sprints for the limitless list. That's just what I'm comfortable with. Unfortunately, I can't really build a limitless team, but for me, I think this weekend, from what we saw last night, because it was kind of consistent between 3 teams at the top, with the Mercedes right behind the group of McLarens, Ferraris, and Max itself. I think that's how you go limitless. And then I think if as long like Hamilton has a lot of experience on this China track. He's won it 6 times. It's more than anyone else has. He's obviously much more comfortable in the car on this track than he was in Australia last week, which is nice to see. So I wouldn't put it past you to put the 2X on Hamilton. I wouldn't put it past you to put the 2X on either McLaren driver. That's kind of how I feel. I don't know if I want to. I wouldn't be happy putting on Leclerc. I wouldn't really. I don't hate putting it on Verstappen because he could very well win the sprint tomorrow. I just don't know if over a full long race if he'll be able to hold off with how good the McLarens look. I think it has to be a McLaren just for the race setup. We saw them manage tires well in Australia. This track being newly paved has a lot of grip. It's going to be hard on the tires. Everyone was saying, like, I think they were setting lap records today or last night, sorry, early this morning, however we want to look at it. So degradation, I think, is going to be very high. I think McLaren is where you have to go with the 2X if you're using a limitless on them. Just going to quickly move over to the builder teams I have that I built for you guys here in this account. So these are the ones where we have the budget builder, the driver focus, and the constructor focus. So on a lot of these teams, kind of similar. So for this one, as on a constructor focus made, this is the one that I would rather be seeing Mercedes and Ferrari in there, but I don't expect much work to be done here. I'm not getting rid of Piastri. I am going to keep Piastri. I just want to see him in my top left if he is my double up. It just looks a little bit nicer in my head. So nothing new here. This is a team that we saw on the other side. Of course, if instead of Piastri you want to go Antonelli just for a guarantee and going up in cost, be my guest. But I think as far as a constructor focus, because I do think Williams will go up, and I don't really want to move off these two yet, I think, in the season. Now, if you want to make 3 changes, just for research purposes, that only gives me 3 million more. What does that enable me to do with Bortoletto? That does let me get to Ocon. So if I make 3 changes, Albon, Ocon, Ferrari, still gives me a mil to use. Don't really need it. I don't love moving off McLaren just because I expect McLaren to have a really good weekend, but also expect Ferrari to have a really good weekend given where they are. No, I want to go back. Yeah, I think we're keeping it simple. I think for this team, I think all we're doing, keeping it simple, not going too crazy. Maybe I hedge and go hedge on this one, but no, I don't want to hedge R, so I don't want to show you guys what I wouldn't do. So yeah, when I started as a constructor focus, because I really thought I do think Williams is going to be a top constructor. It's kind of showing that with pace so far. So I'm happy keeping them in there, and then eventually I can move these guys around in future weeks. Yeah, but even this team, no, this is what we're doing. I'm going to lock this in as well. Okay, and then we go over to this driver focused one. So this one's really, really kind of messy. Because the problem with Red Bull, for what they cost, only having one driver get you in the points is really, really hurting the Red Bull team right now. Just because it's extremely hard for one driver to get all the points for the team. So I think Red Bull is really unownable until Lawson shows any sign of life. And just looking at the Racing Bulls here, minus 10 points isn't dreadful, same with the Alpine, but it's just a bigger hole to climb out of. I think you might as well be going at a similar price, take the 11 points advantage that Aston Martin has. So this is a team that I'm going to have to wildcard this one this week. It certainly looks that way because I'd like to have Hajar out. I want Signs out. This one's probably going to be Albin now. Actually, what does my team look like if I do this? Hypothetically, if I'm going straight for value, 28, goodness me. So let's go to the bottom here. Where's Lance Stroll? Let's get Stroll in here. And I can have another 20 million here. Oh my gosh. Don't really want to touch Lawson with like a 10-foot stick. But, mm, 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 mm. How can I lower this team? How much more do I need to get George? 21.1. I need a million more. So which one of these guys can I drop by a mil? No one, because Kick Sauber is so far down there. If I dump Aston, I've got 1 point. Take the Kick Sauber, and then here I can run George. This is a little bit gross. It's not my favorite to do, especially when Mercedes was the weaker of the top teams so far in the first qualifying session. I expect them to be able to battle, but I really think the only ones they have a chance at the Ferraris. I don't think they have a chance at passing Max. I don't think they have a chance at passing Norris. They only get a few overtake points. They're not finishing on the podium that way. Kind of similar almost to what they had last week, just Antonelli isn't getting as many points. Like, it won't be 32, but maybe he's only getting like 18, just because he's not getting all the overtakes, but he is getting finishing places and maybe starting grid places. So this is an idea. I don't love having these two because eventually, if I'm burning a wild card to get into this, it's going to be really hard to get out of it again. Even having an extra 1.3 to spare, but everyone's going up in value. Ugh. Bother. Yeah, it is an option, but again, it's as tempting as this is. I'm already thinking of an exit plan as to how to get out of it. The difference might be that it's a slow process, like maybe next week. So this is my team. Next week, I get rid of Russell and I get rid of Sauber, and then I can go back to maybe a Williams, and then I still have 15 mil, and then maybe once Sainz can right the ship again, that's where I go, and I slowly climb out that way, or even I take another minus 10, and maybe Alpine rights the ship, and I go with that, and that's when I'm running, or it's not Sainz at all, and I do my 3, take out the constructors, take away George Russell, and I go, who's the cheapest driver? So we take Bortoletto, and then I have 17 mil to use, which still isn't enough to get into there. So if I run this strategy, it might not, I might have to keep George as the one driver. And then I'm dropping Lando, because now I have 30 mil to burn. So looking at constructors first, maybe that's where now I can get into a Mercedes, 7.9. And then so now next week I'm taking a minus 10 to kind of get out from under that team. Take like an Ocon, and then that's what my team looks like next week, being a little bit more driver heavy. I don't hate that as much as I thought I would. I mean, the emotional side of me hates this, because I don't really want some of these drivers to succeed the most, more than others. They're probably just middle tier drivers to me, and minus a couple. But yeah, this is the dilemma we are facing. But for the sake, I think, guys, for the sake of this, as far as a driver, yeah, you know what, guys? I think we're gonna do it. I think we're gonna try and recoup some budget. Because looking at this team, because I know my other team's 99.8, so this one's 99.6. So not the worst. So going back up through here. So we're gonna take Lando. Expect great things from Lando this weekend. We're taking George. We're taking Kimi Antonelli. Who else do I even have in there? Hulkenberg and Stroll, I think, were the other two. Which left me with constructors of What are we doing? We're going to do Haas and Kick Sauber. This seems extremely gross, but these are three of the top drivers. Um, we're going to try it, guys. I'm going to do this for you because this is honestly a test. So if we're going to see what happens here if we start leaning into three key drivers and maybe taking value places for constructors because they are taking the sum of two drivers, so it could be worse. Let's see how this works. We're gonna apply the wild card. Makes me feel so dirty, but here we are. So we're gonna do this. That'll be our team, and then getting out of it because we made 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 4 changes. That's well worth it because puts me at minus 20. So this is gonna be what we're doing. We're gonna try this for the sake of a driver focused build. So for anyone that's been doing a similar thing, kind of punting the constructors, this is something we can be doing with the wild card to get up in the budgets, and who knows, might be some decent points. Let's see it. So we're gonna run that through. We can come back and make changes if we change our minds here, and then strictly budget building teams. This is another one again. Ooh, why did I do this to myself? Okay, so we're getting rid of Red Bull, getting rid of Sainz, getting rid of Hajar. So knowing for Hajar, we're automatically looking at Bortoleto, looking at Sainz. Why do I do this myself? It just should automatically sort by value for me. It's way, way nicer. I already have Albon in here. Okay, so that's an issue. Lance Stroll can get in there. Hulkenberg's in there. And I got lots of money for a constructor. Kind of leaning towards McLaren, which only leaves me with 5.2, which isn't even enough for Bortoleto, I believe. Nope. Wow, that extra 0.2 is everything that's on my former team. Okay, so we're not going McLaren. We will go Ferrari. Most excellent. And then for the drivers left for this, we're looking at Esteban Ocon, I think. Because he's 7.5. I need an 8.1, which we don't have. And we wouldn't want anyway if Alonso was within reach. So, looking at all positives, yeah, I think we could do a lot worse than this team. So how many transfers is that right now? So that's only 3 transfers, and that takes a minus 10. I think that's well worth it, and then run the wild card in another week or two to be able to get out from this budget team into a more points building team. So I think that's what we'll have to do with these teams. So like I said, I've showed you, actually, you know what? I think I'm happy enough with this. Building this budget for you. I'm going to lock that one in right now so you guys can see everything I'm doing. So I'm taking minus 10 points already on this team. So what a difference. So made an extra transfer without using the wild card here for minus 10. Use the wild card to get as many changes here on this one, and then absolutely none over here on this team. Or sorry, just 1. So to be able to have 3 for next week to maybe avoid this problem, which maybe is what I should have done. Some similarities. It's kind of cool to see how close my budget and constructor kind of focus when I mean the constructor could be a little bit heavier. But say Levy, that's where we are. So short of that, feel free to leave comments on the board. Follow me on X. I'll be answering questions right up until race time, as well as if I see your comments on any other fantasy channels. We're all trying to work together. We're a community. Still join the league code if you can before the race starts tonight. Join the Fantasy Sports Advice .network website to join all the fantasy sports communities that we have, from basketball, baseball, football, soon to be hockey. We got racing, as you know, and enjoy the sprint, enjoy qualifying, and we'll talk to you after China. See ya.